Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus. Welcome back to another Monday. Joining me as always is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. Timstradamus, what did Mr. and Mrs. Hamburger name their daughter?
Hamlet?
Hamlet. It sounds Shakespearean, but it was Patty.
How unoriginal of them.
How dare you, sir?
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for thought. Man, we got that down pat.
We're so good now.
Some would say profesh.
Nobody.
Well, Timstradamus, we have a new shout out to make.
Yes, we do.
And this one's a pretty big one. We have our first Master Brewer Daddy.
What's up, Daddy?
Welcome to the Tea Club, Max Geller.
Welcome and love and appreciate you.
That was great.
So, Voyse.
Yes, Damas.
What have you brewed for me this morning?
I have brewed for you a tea that I thought would suit your fancy. It actually has black tea, of course, as the base, with pineapple, raspberry bits, marigolds, and cornflowers.
It smells fantastic.
I was hoping it would be pretty fruity for you.
Oh, it is. That's an easily 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I like that taste.
Perfect. Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your morning cup of brew, let's go ahead and delve into these stories. For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story!
It tastes like a hot gusher.
A hot gusher?
Yeah.
Dang, that sounds good. Now I want my own. Am I the a-hole for making my boyfriend's daughter hang up the phone? I, 28 female, have been with my boyfriend, 30 male, for 2 years. He's got kids with his ex-wife, a boy, 9, almost 10, and a girl who turned 8 today. They've been divorced for 7 years. His ex-wife and him are weirdly good friends. We had planned a special dinner for his daughter for her birthday at a restaurant for her, but we had to bump the time back due to other things. So while we were there with us, the kids, my parents, his mom, his cousins and their kids, my brother and sister, his ex-wife texts him. They alternate birthdays each year, and this year is his. So he took off all week and has them for 10 consecutive days, which is rare for him. So she was texting to ask if she could call to talk to their daughter, Willow, on her birthday. My boyfriend says she can call right then, so she does. Willow and her brother are total mama's girl/boys. So when she's on the phone, they're ignoring everyone else there. My grandmother tried to talk to Willow, and Willow completely ignored her and kept talking to her mom. And my boyfriend didn't even put the phone on speaker. He just handed it to her, so I have no idea what her mom was even saying. And eventually, after a little over probably 5 minutes, I tell Willow to hang up the phone. Willow didn't want to, but she did. She stayed upset the rest of the dinner, and my boyfriend asked me when we got home what Willow was talking about when she said I told her to stop talking to her mom. I said I made her hang up the phone because she was ignoring everyone else around her that came to celebrate with her, just to talk to her mom who she's going to see in 5 days. My boyfriend got mad at me and said that's not how this works. According to him, whoever has the kids on their birthday, the other parent calls them usually towards the end of the day so that no plans were interrupted and they're allowed to talk until they're both ready to hang up. He said she asked if she could call, and he said yes, because he had told her originally that that was when we would be done with all of our plans for the day before we had to change the time, so that was when she had expected to be able to talk to Willow. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but my boyfriend is really mad at me, saying it wasn't my place to tell Willow and her brother that they had to hang up on their mom, and that I'm causing a problem where there wasn't one before. And if I can't see that, then maybe we shouldn't be together. I still don't think it was wrong to have her hang up, but he's pretty mad, and Willow and her brother are both now avoiding me. Am I the a-hole?
All right, well, let's go on a journey. So what I heard was we have a 28-year-old who is our OP. She is with a 30-year-old who happens to have 2 children, 8 and 9. So our OP says that they are not married and they've been together for 2 years. Does she say in there that they live together?
No.
I'm not certain as to what the relationship is between her and the children. I could see where initially the OP would be right as far as manners are concerned. In that situation, people are at a, I guess, dinner birthday party. Those are the people you should be paying attention to in that moment. The problem starts here when I guess they have to push this birthday back to a later time for everybody. It makes sense. You want everyone to attend. There's an agreement, though, that they've had between the parents that whoever doesn't have the kid on their birthday gets the call at the end of the day to share that time with them, right? Get away from all of the events. That way they're not taking attention or being rude in this regard. I'm guessing the father in this situation, because see, if that's me, I'm asking if we could push that call back just a little bit, right? Because again, you do have guests, you are entertaining. Those people are only there for that finite amount of time. You're only there for an hour or so. That's where your attention should be focused. That phone call probably could have happened a little later. Again, you can be flexible. It's okay to be flexible. Everyone can be understanding when they need to be. I don't think I hear where he asked the ex if they could push that back. He just said, you know what, this is the agreement that we've kind of settled on, and this is what we're going to stick to. That's the only thing I will give ROP in that sense. This is something that her boyfriend and his ex have agreed upon. That's just what it is, and ROP should have respected that. If that's how they wanted to conduct themselves, rude or not, that isn't for her to put her finger on that scale, in my opinion. And you could have spent your time doing anything else at that party, talking to anybody else, but you hyperfixated on the kids and their conversation with their mother. My real question is, the one odd thing I heard her say was, he didn't even put it on speaker. What would that have mattered, and why does that matter so much to you?
I'm really glad that you actually brought that up, because for me, that was a huge red flag. Usually, I mean, you're talking about an 8-year-old talking to their mother. They miss them. It doesn't matter if a child's been away from a parent for a couple days. When they're that young, sometimes they miss the parent that they're usually around the most with, and they get a little homesickness. I remember when it would come to that, every time I would have my bouts between visiting my father and then coming back to my mother and the back and forth, it would be like homesickness both ways, because you want both parents to be there, but you can only enjoy having them during allotted amounts of time. I think for me, the huge warning bells here was not just her wanting to snoop in and listen to what an 8-year-old is saying to their mother, but then on top of that, you have her saying that these children are mama boy and mama girl, and how she's making it feel as if it's a toxic relationship for children to miss a parent.
She does have a very interesting viewpoint going on here. I can't tell if it's possessiveness that's playing a role in how she looks at their relationship with specifically the kids and the ex, because she's also doing this thing where she's quantifying the relationship between her boyfriend and the ex. Well, they couldn't possibly be good friends.
Weirdly good friends, is how she described it.
Her wording is very interesting, but in my opinion, that makes you an a-hole. And you're going to let your jealousy completely ruin that relationship that you're trying to build with those kids and your boyfriend. He is correct. If this is something that you can't handle and you can't mature into, you're dealing with a lot. Not all relationships start with someone already having had an ex and kids. When you step into those situations, you need to learn that you're already put into a position where you have to be mature. Don't let those insecurities destroy a life you're trying to build with someone and their kids. That's my biggest piece of advice to you. And if you're having problems learning how to cope with all of those things, go get into counseling. It's a good place to start. So OP, you are the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP is the a-hole. Redditors came out saying that it wasn't the OP's place to decide how long the daughter should be talking to her mom, especially when there's a clear understanding between parents of how they co-parent. The end of it was not your kid, not your place. Now, let me read a couple comments that I read from the OP that, I don't know, still struck me as wrong, but I just had to share it. There was one Redditor that came out saying how you were saying, Damus, where it kind of felt like both sides were at fault when it came to what should be considered proper manners, especially when you're dealing with a celebration with others and you're out. And also how our OP also did a faux pas on their piece when it came to, rather than talking to the actual parent on what is bothering them, they went straight to the child.
Yeah.
Our OP said, "Thank you. My family was running late, so we had to move it back. So the time he told her originally she could call was in the middle of our dinner. It's not my fault he couldn't tell his ex no, and that plans changed, so she needs to wait a couple more hours to talk to Willow. And she did know we were at dinner. Willow told her on the phone." Another additional comment from our OP is, it's also because Willow and her brother were missing their mom because they live with her and my boyfriend gets them on the weekends. So she could have made it shorter knowing how much the kids are attached to her at the hip so that it didn't drag out. I know Willow told her we were out to dinner. If I hadn't had her hang up, Willow would have talked for the rest of the dinner, and that's rude in my opinion.
While it may be rude, because I would see that as rude, the difference here is that's not your kid. That was an agreement made by the father and his ex with their child. Yes, you have a right to have an opinion, but you go to your boyfriend first, not sitting there putting the kid on blast in front of people at their birthday.
I agree with that. Now our OP actually gave us a small update. Our OP said, like so many of you were hoping for, my boyfriend broke up with me by way of bringing anything I had to his house to my apartment this morning. We've never lived together and he never gave me a key to his house before he went somewhere with the kids. He said he didn't want to be with someone who was going to cause issues with his ex-wife, and apparently he had a long list of my transgressions, which he had written down and handed to me. He said it was over and left immediately without letting me say anything to him.
Well, he chose his kids, and that's how you should take that. Hopefully going forward, though, you can take some of the criticism that you got. I'm sorry that it came at the end of your relationship, but I believe he probably did what was best for his kids.
For me, I feel the judgment from our OP when it comes to these children, these two elementary kids, and whatever relationship that is amicable between her now ex-boyfriend and his ex-wife. I can just understand if he had a whole other list of issues as to why he was breaking up with her, especially when after 2 years, he didn't even give you a key to his place.
There was a lot in there that spoke to how much or how little he trusted her.
Very interesting. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about canceling plans. Am I the a-hole for canceling plans with my best friend, female 26, after she accused me, male 32, of stealing? On Tuesday, I called my best friend to tell her about my new job, which we often do. I briefly mentioned that I stole a cute cup. I thought nothing about it, but she immediately went quiet and asked me why, and where did you take it from? I explained to her it's from the communal kitchen and basically nobody uses it anymore, so nobody would care. She calmed down a bit and told me she'd still never do it, and also that I could get into trouble. After giving examples of how nice my boss is, she admitted, okay, sorry, maybe I was too uptight. Every workplace is different, I guess. I asked her if she really thinks I'd steal, and her answer shocked me. I hope not, but you never know. After that call, I felt really guilty. So the next morning, I asked her again if she sees me as a thief and a bad person. She repeated herself, of course I don't see you as a bad person. It would surprise me if you'd steal. Obviously you didn't. But given you mentioned you stole first, and we only know each other for 3 months, you never know. What the fuck? I asked her if she never used that word jokingly. It's not the first time she thinks negatively of me without asking any questions. In her view, she just had a different opinion, which happens, and asked how she can word it differently so I won't get hurt. In my opinion, it has nothing to do with different opinions. I couldn't sleep, work, and breathe properly out of stress, and almost turned myself into the police because I felt so scared and guilty. I told her she should ask neutrally before jumping to conclusions. Well, now she doesn't even want to meet on Saturday like we usually do because she needs to study for an exam in 2 weeks. She says it has nothing to do with our discussion, but we can have a call later. I accepted and said I was thinking about canceling plans with my friends to be with her, but now she can study alone until after the exam. Maybe it's the best for both of us. Now she's even more irritated. Am I the a-hole?
This was confusingly written, I'll be honest, because I want to make sure I understand it. ROP says he stole a cup from a communal space.
At his workplace.
But this entire thing he goes on, he's trying to say he didn't steal, right?
Correct.
But he admits at the beginning that he stole the cup. So that makes you, by definition, a thief. Why are you upset with your friend by definition that they said yes?
But apparently he only meant it jokingly. I think for me, the bottom line is here, if you didn't ask someone for that cup and it didn't belong to you, then you stole it.
That's what that means, regardless of if you didn't mean to or if it was a joke or however any other way you want to spin reality, you're a thief. So if you're going to ask somebody if they believe that you're capable of stealing when you've told them you've stolen something and they say yes, why are you shocked? We are a culmination of the actions we take in life. Now, you can go forward in your life and make sure you don't repeat mistakes. Now, he says that he's gotten to the point where he's hyperventilating and thinking about going to police. I think maybe if that's where you're going with this, you might need to get into counseling. That might be more of a mental health issue than you know it. That's where I would start. But what exactly is he asking here?
He's asking if he's the a-hole for canceling plans with his friend because she accused him of stealing.
I mean, it already sounds like your friend had already stopped having plans with you first. So I don't even know if that question is in play here. It might all be moot. It doesn't pertain to this anymore. I think she left you before you left her as a friend.
Yeah, because she was saying that she was busy with her exams.
And it's strictly because of the decisions you made. And then it sounds like you're not able to take accountability because you stole, but then you're not capable of stealing in your mind. I think a lot of people will be given pause from someone they just met. You said that's 3 months in. That's not a long time to be a friend. You're still in the assessment phase. We all have to feel out people that come into our lives just to make sure that it is the values that we carry. In my opinion, OP, you're the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP is the a-hole. The long and short of it is, so you said that you stole something. Your words to your friend. Your friend questions you on you stealing this something. And then you're surprised that she thinks that you're a thief. That's a little confusing. Additionally, for me, the biggest warning signs here is that you would consider someone your best friend after 3 months. I know that there are plenty of people who form very close bonds with who they now have as long-term friends, and they did it very quickly. I think for me, the total fixation of this relationship from OP screams as unhealthy. Additionally, in the comments section, our OP would refer to this person, this friend, as their favorite person. And this was actually a call out to other Redditors that this screams of some form of mental illness, because a lot of people who have either borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder tend to fixate on individuals and create them as a favorite person and use that term specifically. So I found this situation to be very interesting. I feel as if our OP definitely needs to find some counseling to help them work through what appears to be some of the issues that they have. If you use a word jokingly, then you need to make sure that the other side understands that it's a joke. And if you're doing something and you're trying to downplay the bad deed, that shows, at least to me, that you don't hold yourself accountable for some of the acts that you do. And that's very worrying.
Agreed. Hopefully our OP was able to read some of those criticisms.
I hope so, but they just deleted their post. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about an unblended family. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother not to blame our family or his wife's family for their regret? My brother and his wife got married 6-ish years ago. They were 2 single parents who wanted to be married to each other, but the kids were not as into the idea as the adults. So they decided to live as a married couple with 2 separate families. My brother's kids were parented by my brother and my brother only. His wife's kids were parented by his wife and his wife only. His kids interacted with our family. Her kids interacted with hers. The kids interacted with their bio siblings only. They were not a blended family or even a family unit. It was very much 2 family units centered around a married couple. It was weird to members on both sides of their families, but it just was what it was. I always saw a time where they would regret it, especially if they ever wanted to change how things worked and the kids were against it, or no love developed for step relatives we have no ongoing relationship with. But I also knew it wasn't my place to interfere. Well, the day has come and regret has already sunk in. So my brother's oldest graduated high school a couple of weeks ago, and my parents told them that they had saved for each grandkid's future, and they now had access to money to pay for college or to get them started if they went to an apprenticeship. Of course, my brother's oldest was excited, but my brother and his wife not so much, because the money saved will be for each bio grandkid, not the wife's kids, and they do not have the same help and support from their bio grandparents. My brother and his wife told my parents they can't give to some and not all. They said the stepkids are not a part of our family and are not their grandkids, and therefore they do not owe them any money. My brother attempted to talk to his kids about the money, and they said they didn't care about his wife's kids, or if they struggle or not, so they're not worried about them. My brother and his wife are now pissed with both their families for the very clear and very hurtful divide in their family. And I told my brother he has no business blaming us for the regret he and his wife feel when they made the decisions they did and now have the outcome that was always inevitable. I told him the kids all seem happy, so they should get over it. He was pissed. Am I the a-hole?
This is what happens when you get your comeuppance. Because that's not something that they started. That was something that the dad and the mom started and implemented within that family. That is very odd the way that is structured, but everyone's different in how they parent and how they choose to operate within their families. My question here is, how does one put a family together, raise their kids separately? Were they in the same home?
They don't specify that.
Because what they do say is he raised his kids and she raised hers.
Correct.
Does that mean that they were still at the other parents' house when they were growing up?
The OP actually says they did live together, but lived separate family lives while in the household. The way that our OP makes it sound is everything was really divided. Like the only thing that they had in common in that house was just that mom and dad stayed in the same room together. But finances concerning the kids, the father took care of those finances for his kids. The mother took care of those finances from her kids. It sounds like they just fully ignored each other when it came to the siblings.
I can't imagine that being a very healthy way to live, especially when you have kids that are growing up and learning values and all that. But different strokes for different folks. Just understand that there's consequences that come with those decisions. And the consequence here was you had grandparents on one side, on the father's side, save up money because they wanted to help their grandkids. You cultivated those relationships. This is what comes out of them. I'm going to agree with the grandparents. They don't owe your stepchildren a cent. So, in my opinion, you're not the a-hole. You have every right to point out the hypocrisy.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. There were a lot of Redditors that were surprised at this type of divide in a family. But they said, look, how you live your life is how you live your life. But you can't complain when your choices didn't actually allow for real relationships to form because of those decisions. I just find the whole thing wild. I can't imagine living with someone and essentially almost ignoring them. I mean, that's how, if you have these children who, it sounds like these children are between the ages of 8 and 12. And the one from the father's side, they're like, I don't care about what happens to these people. I mean, they might be called my step siblings, but for me, I don't care what happens. If they're poor, if they're okay, it's not my problem.
Well, that's why I would wonder how exactly these two parents have spoken to their kids about the other kids. I can't imagine being in an environment where that exists and it be healthy. But to each their own, like I have said and other commenters have said, it's your choice to do that, but be prepared for the outcomes. The division is stifling.
Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about a bit of distance. Am I the a-hole for being distant with my husband and wanting to end the marriage? My husband, 33, and I, 29, have been married for almost 8 years and have known each other for about 15 years now. Recently, I discovered that he's been addicted to porn and has been consuming it excessively throughout our marriage. Lied and hid it from me and made me feel crazy for questioning him. So as a way to move forward and be honest and communicative with me, He tells me that he's had an interest in exploring sex with other people and encouraged me to do the same because he felt like our sex life wasn't exciting enough and that we got married too young. So I went ahead and gave it a shot as a last measure to fix whatever was left of our marriage, which was stupid, I admit, on my part for trusting him and thinking that this can help fix our marriage. I met a couple of guys who treated me better, listened to me, and made me feel desirable, beautiful, and more than just good enough, which I never felt with my husband. And then he begs to stop and wants to go back to being monogamous again. Now I can't stand him. I question my life decisions for ending up with him and for seeing something special in him, even though I feel like he is doing better now and is trying desperately to keep me around and our relationship alive and keeps telling me how both of our lives will suck if we get a divorce. I don't know if he's saying this as a way to manipulate me into staying by believing I can never do better and spend my life regretting ever wanting to separate, or if it's actually true and that I should indeed work harder on maintaining our marriage because this is a normal part of life and I need to forgive and let go, even though he fumbled so badly and destroyed my love, trust, and the way I view him. Sorry for the long read. Please no trolls. I'm going through something real. Any insight or help can be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
You're not the a-hole. You don't owe people relationships. We've said it numerous times on this channel. There's no such thing as a wrong answer for wanting to dissolve a marriage. That just is what it is. Now, for what went on inside of it, I'm sorry that your soon-to-be ex has that addiction. Hopefully he goes and seeks the help he needs. A lot of people don't realize that an addiction is that when they are inside of one. But it sounds like he's at least a little bit aware of it, but was able to turn it on its side and make at least you look at it through a different lens, that it was something else that he was asking for within their relationship. And then it ended up backfiring in his face massively because you found people that treated you the way you'd like to be treated. I think you definitely need to move on with your life. I hope you find someone that shares your type of values and that in the future, you don't let these things that happen within this relationship carry over. So OP, you're not the a-hole in my opinion.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. Now, there was one Redditor that came forward that said, OP, it sounds like your husband is actually projecting. Their lives won't suck. His will. That he tried looking for something better and then realized that he had it. But that OP shouldn't be stuck in a marriage that makes them unhappy and feel mistrustful. Now, I find it very interesting because a few days after this post, our OP posted another Am I the a-hole post. And from that other one, it sounds like they're trying to work it out, but that there's still something that is inherently wrong, where she's not getting the perceived affections from her husband the way that she would like. And it's making her question whether she is attractive herself. I must say it's a little worrisome. If you are feeling out of love, or if your foundational cores are no longer being met by your partner, you shouldn't force yourself to stay with someone and twist and bend your way to try and make it make sense. Because the thing is, we're not some puzzle piece that has to fit in the right spot. We are individuals that need to be understood and felt. And if a partner isn't meeting those needs and you are not able to meet those needs for that partner, it's time to walk away. And it might be difficult because for our OP, since they've been together so long, it's as if they're releasing a lifetime of commitment on their end. I can imagine that that's very scary. But now you're going to a point where you went from a monogamous relationship, forced yourself into a polyamorous relationship, and then was essentially told, nope, we don't want that. You can't leave me, right? Because if you do, our lives will be absolute shitty. And then to hear our OP come out in another post, now wondering if they're even sexually attractive, it's a very interesting situation, but it's something that's very worrying because now you can actually see it start to spiral in other directions. They're trying to fix it, but the true fix here, at least for me, is they're toxic for each other.
Sure.
And that's not good. Well, let's go on to our last story and see what you think about a little bit of petty revenge for this one. For our last story, Dumb boss cut my hours and lost his job. Yeah, the title's a little weird, but let's go into the story. Thank you, 57, for the grammatically correct edit of my post. So from the age of 16 to 20, I worked at a 24-hour fast food joint. After having worked there for so long, I was very good at what I did, to the point I could handle the entire store by myself as long as I needed, with little to no drops in customer satisfaction or speed. When I was 19, my grandfather got sick, which was really hard because I loved him to bits. My boss and I were close, so we worked out a deal where he would schedule me a ton, and I would essentially be on call for any time he needed someone to cover a shift. I would also work a straight 24-hour shift on Monday, the busiest day. Being alone for 8 hours of it, these piled on hours resulted in me getting around 10 to 15 hours of overtime per week, sometimes more. This actually saved him money, because one guy working for $17 an hour at time and a half was cheaper than paying 3 guys $15 an hour to do the same work, allowing him to make way bigger profits. This allowed him more leeway and rep with corporate, meaning he would get bigger bonuses, and he could give me a raise after around 6 months, citing how well I worked. The other part was that I got a week off a month to visit my grandfather and assist him with his care or anything else I needed, while the extra money allowed for me to help pay for his treatment. Our agreement went on for a year before he was promoted to regional manager, which was a big jump. He got the raise because our store was making like 15% more than the next highest performer, while being in a less traveled area. The new manager who took over for him was a piece of shit. My manager told him of our deal, and he scoffed and said it was dumb because of how much overtime he would be paying me. My boss just shrugged, because even if the store's performance dropped, he would just look even better. And so my hours were lowered to like 30 a week. Yet he was still calling me in and scheduling me for solo 8 hours and full 24-hour shifts. So I was working shit hours, but getting paid less. He also stopped the week off a month, so I couldn't see my grandfather. So I quit, and he soon realized how fucked he was. As I heard from my boss, the store's profits dropped to 15% lower than the next lowest store in the region rather than the district. And the new GM was shortly fired for somehow dropping 125% in profits. And the guy tried to blame me for quitting. Nothing fancy. I just put in my 2-week notice, but I thought it was funny.
Should have left well enough alone.
I mean, if you're talking about being overworked, there are some people who cannot handle being overworked. And then there are some people who live for their work and they're able to deal with the crazy hours. Do I suggest it for me? No. But if you have something good coming your way, why would you want to go ahead and mess it up?
Well, see, the thing here is, and I do agree with you, you shouldn't be working those type of hours, period. That's not good for you. There's a reason why we have things in place. And I don't know whether or not this is in America or in other parts of the world, but there are reasons why we do what we do. Forcing someone into those type of hours is a little much, but I guess in this case, it wasn't a force. This was them taking on this because they were able to get a whole week off a month, pay for things because of the overtime. So it suited the needs. And it sounded like everything was working copacetically. You know, I there was a give and a take. I'm hoping that you found something more healthy to move on to in life, a little more balance. But yeah, for your new manager, that sucks. I mean, you came in to a branch that was doing well, exceedingly well. Something said 15% over the best one and a lower trafficked area. How would you then take that, go, how did you do it? I'm going to do the complete opposite.
In the end, I guess you reap what you sow. And clearly he was throwing seeds on rocks.
That took a second for it to load.
I remember my grandpa saying that to me. He said, why is it that it would be okay for anybody to want to throw seeds on rocks? You clearly aren't going to grow anything there. Think a little more.
That's a good one. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
I think my favorite one from today is probably the blended one. Or non-blended family.
The unblended family.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. I can't imagine being in a household quite like that.
I would love to just understand the inner workings of an everyday in that household. Exactly what was put down as far as rules and how everyone was interacting with each other. I just find that very fascinating, and because it's so far different from anything I've ever experienced in life, it would be interesting to understand the workings of it.
You can definitely feel that there wasn't even just the start of a friendship there at the very least.
Yeah.
Which is the best that you can hope for when it comes to blending families.
I would just wonder how you can teach kids to not interact with each other in a household where they're sharing it with other siblings, even if they're step.
You're not my dad, Tom.
Yeah, that division is wild. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
And if you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. Just to remind everybody, we're actually posting twice a week on YouTube, on Mondays and Wednesdays, and on Fridays, we have our Damas After Dark on a Patreon.
Yes, be there.
Or be square. We would also love to thank all of our Patreons for your continued support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of you. And as always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
Yes, which one really stirred up your passion?
Mine was the stealing non-stealer.
God, if you're not gonna, I can't even say anything to that. Why would you do and say that you do the bad thing and then you say, but I didn't do the bad thing?
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Hopefully they can learn from the experience.
I hope so.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.
I want spaghetti tonight.
Ooh, spaghetti.